I'm going to call to order the City of Burlington Board of Finance meeting on Monday, December 9th at 5:17 p.m. Thank you for your patience. We had a little confusion about the start time, so I appreciate people being flexible. And with that, our first item is the agenda. Is there a motion to amend or adopt the agenda? Councilor Barlow?
Yes, I move to amend our agenda to remove item 3.5 from our consent agenda and add it as the first item on our deliberative agenda.
Hold on 1 second, Mark, just make sure we still live. I see people. I see.
Yes, you're live.
Okay, great. We're just gonna do this. Hold on, people. And this. I don't know what that is, but now we can. Okay, great. So the motion is to remove item 3.5 from consent and place it as item 4.1 on the deliberative agenda.
Yes.
Okay, that's the motion. Is there a second? By Councilor Kane. Any further discussion on the matter before we vote? See none. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item 2, public forum. It is our practice to first go to folks from the public in person here in City Hall, and then we go online. Is anyone here from the public who would like to address the Board of Finance? See none. We'll go online. Does anyone online like to address the Board of Finance for public forum? We have 2 members of the public online today. Great. So let's go with former City Councilor Sharon Busher. Sharon, welcome. Good evening. Oh, hold on 1 second, Sharon. There you are, Sharon.
Thank you. I raised my hand premature because I thought you were mid-meeting because there was just this blank screen. So I apologize for that. But so I'm going to try to be quick, but I have a couple of items to talk about. First of all, on consent 0 North Avenue, the acquisition for wetlands, yes. However, I continue to be concerned about once we acquire property, we feel we have to maintain it or make it accessible to the public. And I believe that some of like this wetland property should be acquired to preserve it, but not necessarily to bring it into the parkland property per se for people to take advantage of. I think that some of this acquisition is for the rest of the habitat, the other animals, etc. So I think there's an added cost that I worry about, and I don't want to preclude saving open space because we think we have to maintain it. And I'm very concerned about that linkage. So I just wanted to mention that. Second thing is the REIB item on consent. The Empowerment Fund awardees. This is an incredible group of people doing amazing work. And I wish that it would be highlighted at the City Council because not many people go to the Board of Finance, as you know, I mean, except the people that have to go. But I really would like the public to know about this. This is amazing. And it just made me feel like, there's hope. And we need that. The other thing I wanted to mention, 2 other things. One is the request for money for the wastewater plants. Certainly, that's not a problem for me, but it brought to my attention once again, this particular request by 2027 will bring in an additional cost. And so what I'm really asking the administration and the Board of Finance to do is to keep track of how much additional costs for fees are being added, because we have that $200 million request also. And I really want to understand the cumulative impact. I think the public does, it's not just me. So anyways, and then the last thing I wanted to say was that I wanted to thank Catherine for the great information and the mayor's office also for the great information regarding where we are with expenditures and revenue. And as far as the gross receipts and the sales tax, I'm just wondering, do we really believe the eclipse then saved us, or did it not really make a difference? Because those revenues are down. So those are my comments. I know they're scattered, but I care about a lot of things. So thank you so much.
Thank you, former Councilor Sharon Busher. We appreciate it. Our other member of the public, I believe online, is Karen Sita. Welcome.
Howdy, can I be heard?
Yep.
Okay, great. I was part of this, I keep dreaming about me advising governments, and it's clear that I must. I'm actually asking that we create a fund for the city to get a consultant to really advise. First of all, I'm a real person, okay? I'm a real one, honest, authentic, real, they already know. And clearly the people that surrounding our new mayor do not like her enough, because as Sharon Brasher was talking about, this award thing should be televised. They should put her in a pretty dress. They should let all the children know your first woman mayor is giving money, financial money, to people of color in this city who are already, feeling some type of way. And of course, no one in her team advised her that, because I believe that just because you're a woman doesn't mean they like you. And I think that we should get a consultant, because I give her advice, she doesn't listen. But maybe a consultant who could see it from like how I see it. I don't understand how people are not knowing about this. And they're just gonna keep putting her with negative publicity instead of this very important, very healthy thing that she's doing for our community, which is funding Black people, funding people of color. And of course, again, I really believe that a lot of people on her team, they might want her to be the first woman mayor, but they don't really like her, because if they liked her, they would never allow that. So that's what I'm demanding from the city council, or not the city council, the board of finance, to really get a consultant fee to really figure out, why are people on her team treating her like this? I mean, aren't they happy for her? And again, I'm a real one, honey. You don't have to pay me. I'll just tell you some real advice, because again, they should be putting you in a pretty dress. They should have the little girls right in front with those eyes looking at you like, wow, one day I could be her, I could do this. But of course they don't want to do that, and I don't understand why, because if they liked you, they would advise you to make this public, because who would have made it public? A man, especially Amira Weinberger. So again, I just don't understand how this is happening. I'm supporting her. I'm the only one that's really supporting her, because I'm telling her the truth. And I just think that we need to get a consultant if they won't listen to me, because everything I say comes to life. The attorney general and the city council, they all know everything I say comes to life. And I just don't understand this. But you know what? Maybe a consultant, somebody on the outside will help them, because I'm on the inside and I'm seeing them just doing things intentionally to sabotage her. And we know women love to sabotage other women. So it's unfortunate, but you know what? I know that supporting a woman really is the future. And I'm trying my best to understand why this isn't advertised. This is why this is not on television, why she hasn't even found a local dress from Jesse or someone, a local Burlington company or something to fund her dress. I mean, it just makes absolutely no sense to me. But there's a reason why God said, don't do real estate. Go to Harvard, study government, because you will be advising these governments. You will be advising mayors and presidents and leaders, because this makes no sense to me.
We're about 3 minutes. We're about at the 3-minute mark.
Okay, well, 3 minutes for you to find a friend. Thank you so much, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else online who would like to address the Board of Finance? Seeing none, right? Okay, then we're going to move forward on closing public forum. We're moving now to our consent agenda. And just a reminder, folks, that we have amended our agenda. So what is listed, posted as item 3.5 is actually going to be on our first item on the deliberative agenda. So for the amended version of our consent agenda, is there a motion? Moved by Councilor Barlow. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Chavez. Any discussion on the matter before we vote? Seeing none. Okay. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving right along. We move to our deliberative agenda for now the new item 4.1, and I'll invite our REIB team up in case there's any questions. We move this to the deliberative agenda. This is now the new item 4.1, which is the sponsorship agreements for the REIB Empowerment Fund awardees for fiscal year 25 through our Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Department. And I was gonna announce this tonight, although we have announced it internally. Joining us tonight is the interim director of REIB, Christian Berry, our new interim director, so welcome. And I believe you've been here at the Board of Finance before, but welcome in your new leadership role. And Katie Green, this title, I will not be able to tell off the top of my head, but one of our capable staffers, she's at in our office as well, so welcome. And I know we've moved it from consent to deliberative, but if you wouldn't mind just providing maybe a 1 or 2 minute overview of the Empowerment Fund and a little bit on the long list, of course, of deserving folks that we are funding through this fund. Sorry.
Sure, yeah. Well, I want to say big congratulations to Christian, super excited for her, very, very well deserved. The Empowerment Fund was started in 2000, FY 2023. It was originally funded by ARPA. And this year, thanks to the mayor, it's shifted to be funded by the general fund. And it's for funding local Black and Brown business owners, individuals, or organizations that support Black and Brown people primarily in Burlington. And so this year we had a rollout of our first robust process. Christian created some stipulations that folks had to meet in order to be awarded funding. We had a grant committee, so we had a robust process, but also while trying to make it accessible to get funds directly into the hands of folks doing really good work for folks in Burlington.
Yeah, so just to tag on to what Katie was saying, so the funds have been part of the REIB for quite some time, but has not had a robust process. So we did guidelines and formed a matrix to really make sure that the process was equitable. We are releasing half of the funding for this first half of the fall, and the second half will be released into the spring to support programming that occurs at different times of the year. And through this first process, we had, I think, over $700,000 in requests, and we're able to not fully fund, but partially fund. I think it was around,
It was like around 40.
around 40 folks in the community to support their program.
Are there any questions or discussion from the members of the board? Councilor Carpenter?
Have we done this in the past, or is this the first allocation?
We've done other allocations, but this is the first allocation with the process in place.
What did we do previous to that?
It was at the discretion of the director to hand out the funds.
And you had a grant committee?
Yes,
There were 5 people on it, you said?
3 people on it.
Who was on it?
Katie was on it from the REIB, Ita from BED, and Orietta from HR.
Councilor Barlow?
This is an appropriate time.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
And so today there was an email thread where there was some discussion around the legality of giving money from the city, giving money to the school district. We had an issue back in 2014 where, and there was an agreement that the AOE and the school district may say that they wouldn't accept money from the city under education finance law. And so there was a question, we didn't have clarity on that. And so if it would be appropriate, we could pull that item that I had a question about. And another council had a question about the ability to give money to a religious entity as well. And so there was one item 12. And so just to pull those off for tonight, or until the city attorney can review them and then approve everything else. And then maybe next week we could approve those 2 items. So I would do you want me to?
It would be great if you would
Come up
maybe
with a
amend,
motion?
maybe slightly amend the recommended action here. You want to make that motion?
Should I just read the recommended action and say I guess I would move to remove items 3 and 12 from this list until they can be reviewed by the city attorney, and then take the recommended action on civic clerk. Would you like me to read that?
Before you make that motion, Councilor Arlo, just a process question. Could we table action until Monday for items 3 and 12 in the list? Do you think you'll have the time to review? And the only reason I'm offering that is I want to move with certainty that we are moving forward with after proper legal review, that we are not delaying, because the next Board of Finance would not be for another almost month or 6 weeks or so with the break. So I just wanted to see the table.
So table the whole thing or just
Sorry, just
table?
those 2 items.
Okay.
Well, yeah, number 3 and number 12 within the list, that we would just table those 2 items for action next Monday, the 16th.
Yes, I absolutely think we can do that.
Okay. Would you be open to that
Absolutely.
amendment? Okay. All right, so would you mind reading the motion and then adding the table
Right.
of item 3
Yes,
and 12?
I would move to approve and authorize the interim director of the Racial Equity, Inclusion and Belonging Office and the chief administrative officer to issue grants of city funds from the Empowerment Grant General Ledger and to execute grant agreements memorializing the same, subject to review by the city attorney's office. And I'm not going to read the list, but for everything in the list, except for items 3 and 12, which I would move to table until next, the approval to table them until next Board of Finance meeting on 12/16.
Thank you, Councilor Barlow. Do people understand the motion? Is there a second? Second by Councilor Kane, thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Councilor Jeffers?
I suppose I'll just say I appreciate Councilor Barlow flagging this. It's just based on, and I think the school district one in particular needs to be reviewed in more detail, because I think there's history there that predates my time on the council, but you're familiar with Councilor Barlow. Just based on my experience with respect to a religious organization, I don't believe the city is per se prohibited from providing grant monies to a religious organization. I'm thinking back to various early learning initiative grants, for example, of the Weinberger administration, to preschool programs that were run out of houses of worship, but the preschool program itself is a secular program. I suspect that will be the review here, is to the extent the grant is provided for religious purposes. I anticipate that may be problematic, but to the extent the grant is provided for more secular purposes of a religious organization, I would anticipate it's appropriate. So I will look forward to additional information, but just did want to note that.
We'll note in the packet, of course, each one of them has a very brief sentence summary, but for the Islamic Society of Vermont, it's for technology and equipment for the Islamic Society of Vermont's youth programming, which fosters learning, community engagement, and personal growth. But we will learn more for next week's Board of Finance. Any further discussion on the motion?
I mean, I will be curious about the school department. My understanding is it's not a problem on our part, it's a problem on their part, and whether it affects their funding. So I think we can get an easy answer.
I do too.
Yeah.
I will say, it makes me feel a little bit better to know that this came up in 2014,
Yeah.
well before anyone
Yeah.
currently in the city attorney's office was there. But I will reach out to my source for a lot of guidance on things that happened a long time ago, former city attorney Joe McNeil. And because he also happens to be the attorney for the school board, so I suspect he will be able to offer some insight. And I have similar instincts as Council President Travers with regard to providing funding to religious institutions. I would frame it as long as there is no religious test, to be able to, essentially the programming is open to anyone and not specific to people who practice a specific religion, then we should be fine, but I will certainly verify that. And as it happens, I will be meeting with Interim Director Barry and Katie on Wednesdays.
I did look up our ARPA does address it and you can do it.
Right.
If it were ARPA. I had forgotten that we moved general fund money.
It's actually a mix, but I think we need to move on for the sake of
Yes.
other agenda items. So if folks are ready, I'm gonna call the question. So all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much for coming up and jumping in on this item. We'll see you maybe next week. Okay, thank you. Moving right along to now item 4.2 on our amended agenda, which is the addition of a new position at the airport. It's an airport maintenance worker. I'll keep reading so you can slowly make your way up here. Nick, worker number 2 at the Patrick Leahy Burlington International Airport. And we have Director Longo here. Welcome. Peter Nifty, active vice there. Would you like a quick overview?
This is a relatively simple, straightforward item. This is simply to add another position, adding one more to our existing 2 positions of maintenance worker 2 on our land side division. Land side meaning pretty much everything outside of the fence. We had 2, we're adding 1, now we have 3. It exists in our current budget capacity, and we're removing one of our temporary employees because their term is expiring in just a few months anyways. And then with the passing of this at City Council, we'll start advertising for our 3rd position.
Any questions on this item? Motions on this item?
I'll move the motion.
Okay, so move as recommended.
Move as recommended on Senate Clerk.
Okay, I'll take that tonight because we have time taking. Okay, no time for, okay, but, so moved by Councilor Carpenter, seconded, is there a second? Councilor Barlow, thank you. Any further discussion on this item before we vote? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Director Longo.
Yeah.
Moving along to item 4.3, which is Burlington Electric Department and our U.S. Department of Transportation Charging and Fueling Infrastructure Grant.
Good evening.
Good evening, welcome.
I've got my colleague Emily online, got hung up in some of this bad weather traffic, but we'll also be with you for City Council this evening. We do have a set of short slides for the council presentation. Knowing that the board had a limited amount of time, I wasn't planning to run through them right now, but figured we'd just give you the highlights, which is, as was announced, we have a $4.89 million
Recording in progress.
grant that we were able to compete for and receive, the only entity in Vermont to do so in this round with the federal government. Emily and a number of folks at BED did amazing work to make this happen and put in a really strong application. And as has been discussed, probably in other contexts, we're working incredibly hard and fast to get this money obligated before the changeover in administration. Part of that is the grant acceptance tonight, which will give us the ability to finalize a contract with the Department of Transportation. We're working through NEPA reviews as well. And our goal is by either later this month or perhaps early January to be through the process, have the funds obligated, and then we'll work expeditiously to start to get chargers in inventory, because this is going to help us get 200 chargers, 47 fast chargers, and 153 level 2 chargers. All of the match funding is within our revenue bonds that have either been already issued or are approved by voters to be issued. So there's matching funds available there. And we're going to go from having about 39 level 2 chargers and 1 fast charger in the city to then having a new 200. So hopefully by that point around 240 or 250 chargers in the public network over the next 6 to 7 years. And as I mentioned, we'll go through deeper slides at the council, but hopefully that's a helpful summary.
Any questions? Comments? Seeing none, any motions?
I would move the motion
You can do the short
as,
version. Fine.
What?
You can do the short version tonight, it's okay.
as presented on Senate Clerk.
Thank you, Council Carpenter. Is there a second? Council Barlow, thank you. Any further discussion before we vote? Okay, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Right along, on to item now 4.4, which is the wastewater plant operator reclass grievance agreement, Department of Public Works. That's your hello.
Hello, greetings. I will quickly give a summary. I have with me Division Director Megan Moyer, showing off her new swag that I will soon be wearing, as well. We have worked well with AFSCME here to bring a, longstanding personnel discussion to resolution. Back in May of 2023, there was a request for wastewater operator employees at Maine Wastewater Plant to be reclassified through a process. We ended up with a hybrid solution. One position was reclassified, but 3 positions were tiered. There's no language about tiering in the CBA. And so we couldn't even get to an agreement on tiering until we worked with the union on getting an understanding of where we wanted to go, which took some time. As a result, we were able, as soon as we came to agreement with the union that tiering was the right resolution for these 3 employees, that happened very quickly, and a resolution was approved by the council this last summer. The union did file a grievance in order to get retroactive pay. There is no language in the CBA about retroactive pay for tiered positions. There is for reclassed positions. So we embarked on a number of meetings and discussions with the union and came to a resolution as described herein, where the one reclassed position would get retro pay of $5,000, and the 3 positions that were tiered would get a lump sum payment of $42.50 per employee. Colby Dallaire, the union president, is fully supportive of this, could not make the meeting tonight, but wanted to express his appreciation for our collaborative process to land us with this agreement here tonight. Division Director Moyer, anything to add?
I think so. It happens a lot, the square peg round hole, or vice versa. So it wasn't a perfect fit with how reclassifications are presented in the CBA, and certainly something we would hope to address with the update to the CBA that would allow for when tiering is the solution. I think the biggest difference is when somebody brings a reclassification, it's for that job description. In this particular case, we have a large group of wastewater treatment plant operators with the same job description, and a portion of them had these elevated duties, but not the whole thing. And so we were stuck for a while because the only solution would have been to separate and cleave the work groups, which I believe all the parties at the table believe would be not great for employee morale and for the team. And so things just took a lot longer, but as soon as tiering became available, within I think 6 weeks to bring that to completion.
Any questions or comments from the board?
Just out of curiosity, is tiering something we do in other parts of our personnel?
Yeah, it is an
It's a new
important
tool.
strategy that I feel is going to be utilized more. We have done this in street maintenance, and I know other departments, we have the airport here, is looking at tiering as well. But given the fact that this is not contemplated in the CBA, and the next round of the CBA is coming up June 30th, 2026, that this will be an item that I will be interested to put on the list.
We also do this within DEP. It is an emerging piece within the city, and it works for certain types of employees. And we are working internally to make it even clearer what is reclassification versus tiering, because they are 2 different concepts. Thanks for the question. Any other questions or comments by board? Seeing none, are we ready for a motion? I think we are. So we can shortcut. Yes, Council Barlow.
I'll make a motion as recommended.
Council Barlow, is there a second? By Councilor Travers. Any further discussion before we vote? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. On to the next item with DPW and Water Resources, item 4.5, a resolution. I'm not even going to read it. It's authorizing money related to loan from the Vermont Clean Water State Revolving Fund for construction contracts related to water resources.
Great. I'm going to pass it over to Team Water Resources. We are joined here by Engineering Manager Martin Lee as well. So.
And I know we're tight on time, but I know some had some detailed questions that we tried to address with the small presentation. I don't know what your pleasure is, but somebody may have to do the intro while I get promoted.
Or do we do the presentation at the council meeting?
You can't, I will not be able to
Yeah.
be in attendance at the council meeting. So,
Well, let's see what the questions there are, and then I'm sure we can maybe.
okay, I'll just
use
bring up
some
the
presentation.
presentation.
Are there questions on this item, or do you want to queue it up with maybe like a sentence or two about what this is, and then we can,
Yeah.
for the sake of those also watching.
Great, so, yeah, over the last 2 years, we, were the design process for the Edworks improvements project. It's something that can happen at the wastewater plants regardless of the future, whether there is a bond or not. These improvements are needed and they'll be beneficial for, the plants regardless. We went for the loan, back in June because that helped us ensure that we're gonna meet certain state requirements that basically allow us to skip some federal cross-cutters, BABA. And we are here now with the actual bid in hand. Megan's got the slide up here with the numbers. Back initially, it was 12.8 was the loan that we sought from city council. With an initial construction estimate of 10.3 million. We have since got the bid from PC Construction. It was only one bid, but PC Construction is a local, highly qualified firm that does this sort of work nationally. So we did feel that it was, we were fortunate to have that one bid for this complicated project. Their bid came in at with contingency 15.7, that also includes bid alternates. So when we add up all the project costs, we're at 18.3 million for the loan amendment, as well as the request from PC Construction for at the bottom there, it's 14.1 million would be their initial contract plus 10%, which is a pretty typical construction contingency.
Yeah, I guess just one thing I'll add is somebody had asked sort of what the context was of this project compared to the other projects that we're talking about. And this is what we're calling stage 0. So this is using the previously authorized money from 2018, the $30 million. And it gets us very close to drawing that fully down. The scope that we've been talking about, big number we've been talking about is stage 1 and 2. And as Martin said, kind of came to a head in 2021 where we realized that there wasn't enough money in the 2018 bond to fully fund all of the things that we had hoped to fund. And I can get into that more if anybody is curious as to exactly what happened. But we kind of had to take a step back, figure out all of the things that we had on our plate and then which thing could move forward regardless of some of the other decision making that was happening around the bigger parts of the process. And so this piece of equipment is very, very important because it's at the beginning of the plant and it protects everything downstream. So it makes sense to upgrade those. It was also sort of simpler in that it was easier to go ahead and move forward with its design while we were still figuring out some other things. So there were a lot of reasons why we're plucking that one off and advancing it. I don't know if that answers at least some of the questions we saw floating around.
With that, are there questions or comments from the board? So Travers?
Yeah, so much appreciate the presentation. I appreciate, I know we'd originally talked about this being on consent, but I appreciate your coming to the council for it to be on deliberative here. And, we've talked about it, but I'm just wondering if you can expand upon it a little bit more, because I do believe that, voters who were here back in 2018 did likely feel that when they were voting in favor of $30 million bond project, that was gonna patch some things together without our 6 years later needing to $200 million approximately, place another bond request about. And I remember you're coming here during the summer and approving of this, and years, unfortunately, the costs have gone up. We're adding bid onto it. We need to see the project through. But I do expect that if the water bond is placed on the ballot, we are going to receive questions from constituents around.
Yep.
Oh, wait a minute, I thought that bond we passed back in 2018 was gonna hash things through. Is there something we could have been doing sooner in this process such that we wouldn't be here any longer? Why is it just now 6 years later that we are getting around to spending the vast majority of, or I won't say vast, but the majority of these monies that were approved by voters at the time? So that's sort of question one here is there something we could have been doing sooner with this money to avoid the bond measure that's now being requested in place before voters in the spring? And then I think the second question to that, you've heard it from some other councilors here, is if we do need this $200 million revenue bond, do we really need to do it all in one fell swoop? And I think the fact that we passed $30 million bond back in 2018 and then still have a majority of those monies available 6 years later is leaving some folks wondering, well, could we do some number less than $200 million right now, and then 6 years from now, do more of it at that point? And I know two different projects, two different sets of needs here, but I think looking at it high level, I anticipate that those are the kinds of questions that some of our constituents may have that would be helpful to be answered either. And we could take them here, or I know this also is coming up for the city council, and I won't. Is it a work session? I guess I can't ask the questions. But I think
I think we only have 20
Yeah.
minutes though, so I mean, happy and planning to address some of that, because we are hearing little bits and pieces, and so this weekend took a deep dive into the history and when this happened, this twist, this turn. I mean, the short answer is, in all honesty, when 2018 happened and we were directed to do something, I had inherited what's called a facility evaluation from my predecessor, and those had cost estimates and they had numbers in them. And it turns out, and having talked to some other people in the Vermont community, those facility evaluations, while it had been intended to be a capital planning effort, the scope was absolutely, I now know, not comprehensive enough. It was looking at in-kind replacement of this part for this part. It was not looking at whether the thing actually worked in the first place and whether or not you needed to redesign the whole system. It was not looking at future permit obligations or growth and so on and so forth. And so we did the best with the numbers that we had, but the cost estimates alone were gross underestimates. And so when we entered into the state revolving fund chute, which requires preliminary engineering, formal preliminary engineering, and we hired our current consultant via a request for qualifications to pick the most qualified engineer, versus the previous effort was an RFP in which we picked the absolute lowest cost person, and that cost, I think, was like $40,000 than the next lowest and about $120,000 less than the top person, which I think if we had selected one of those, we probably would have ended up with a better scope and a better deliverable. So once we kind of realized this as we started the preliminary engineering process, we certainly started communicating to the administration in 2021, 2022, that we have a challenge, and we kind of went back to the drawing board to try to take this much bigger problem, do additional planning to figure out how we were going to do this, how we were going to break it out, and to frankly do the work to get numbers, the right numbers or close to the right numbers, before we started talking to anybody, because we didn't want to be in the same situation. And I can lay out, sort of the first time that I mentioned that, I think was in 2022. And then certainly every year thereafter was trying to broadcast it to the DPW commission, the council, and in the budget presentations. So, I mean, that is the story. We did the best we could with the numbers we had at the time, and they were far from what is necessary. And I think the data that I shared with you in one of my presentations that looked at what other communities are having to spend on their wastewater treatment plants. And it puts us well within the ballpark of what they're spending on a per million gallon capacity basis. Gives me more justification that these numbers are the right numbers, which had I not been, frankly, brand spanking new at wastewater in 2018, maybe I would have known that those were the wrong numbers, but nobody on the team, we took what the consultant had given us and we did our best.
And I know we're right up against 6 o'clock here, but sorry, lake bond, is that what we're calling now?
That's what we're
Yes.
calling the clean water portion, and then we do still have that smaller water bond portion, which we certainly broadcast when we did the 2016 water bond. I think if anything, I said I needed $2 million for the next 25 years. And so hopefully we made it clear, and when we looked at our communications, it was always clear that that was just a nugget for the first like 3 to 4 years.
Okay. But lake bond is the larger ask. that is
The big
correct.
one, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll put this out there and then that'll be done for now. I think from what I have heard from some constituents here is what's not sitting well with them is sort of the way that this is described, right? Late 2021, it became clear that $30 million would not address all of the high priority needs and that additional money was needed. Well, when I hear that, like additional money is maybe sort of a few extra million or something along those lines, right? And would not address all of the high priority needs. When I think of a $200 million ask, it's most of the high priority needs were not going to be dealt with.
Correct.
With that $30 million.
Yes, yes.
So I just think we'll need to, be able to explain to voters in a clear way. We were doing it there and it's been in the presentations too, but just to continue upon it. Why it was that sort of the $200 million in needs were not clear or as clear as they are now 6 years ago. And you've named it somewhat here, and it sounds like there's pre-existing issues with your time here, Megan. But I think we'll appreciate further discussion on that as it's going to be necessary as we describe this.
Yeah, and next week, we are going to try to queue up the one thing that we think we could potentially delay on. It's not tens of millions, it's I think 5 to 6 million. But it's gonna require a give and take of if it breaks and we have to replace it, or if something changes, particularly in the biosolids market, then we may have to come back. And so having those caveats, like we're willing to maybe push some things off if we can have the mutual understanding that if some X, Y, or Z happens, that it may trigger the need to return.
Okay.
So we're working hard to try to meet your requests.
Thank you. Yes.
Just, not for tonight, but you mentioned you had some preliminary estimates post 18, and part of, they were wrong, basically, that's what I heard you say. And I'm curious, if, when I say this, particularly this, if the wrongness was just miscalculating what you had to do, but how much of it would have been related to cost escalation? And that's just my own curiosity, that, if we had been right in 2018, regardless how much more would we have?
Yes, and
Yeah.
I don't know that, we did the 2 projects that we did as quickly as we could. And then we had to kind of go back to the SRF shoot of doing design, which takes time and whatnot, and then COVID hit. I don't know that we could have maybe we could have gotten these projects done during COVID.
And I'm not suggesting that you could, it's more out of my own curiosity.
No,
That,
there's definitely been costs.
just because I've seen all of the construction costs, not public works, but just,
Yes,
Right.
going from
I was-
350,000 units to $500,000 a unit for housing.
so we're experiencing the same thing, even, what we thought was a tight cost estimate for this project at 10.3, and then the bids come back,
Yeah.
like 40% higher.
Right, and I guess I was gonna say the disinfection and pump station projects were kind of before the major inflate, like
Yes.
we were bidding that in 2020, and that, I think, major inflation happened like 2021. It was the big bird, like, and so we had those bids.
Right.
Before the, but it would have been a few years since 2018. And so basically those costs were still on the, maybe like double. We were looking at the numbers earlier today. They were significantly higher, not just inflationary, above what we had from the previous report. So just to give you a sense that it's not just inflation.
Well, I think more for the public too, that's just gonna be part of the conversation, so having clear answers on that.
Well, and some of our concern with delaying anything that isn't our current scope is if we delay it, it will cost more later on, and so it is a give and take on trying to make those decisions. It's even, and this bid coming back higher is a little bit of a slap in the face, because one of the things we're also trying to figure out is what's the right contingency amount for this large ask that we're wanting to bring to the voters. We can ramp down the contingency, and it is appropriate to potentially do so, but is it going to bite us if we then don't have enough money? And so that's some of, wanting to engage you all in that conversation and those risks as well.
We are at witching hour, and I have a suggestion for our last agenda item, say ballot item. Too much ballots lately. Are there any further questions or comments on this item 4.5? Okay, seeing none, we have a recommended action on city clerk. Would anyone like to make a motion? Give a short version. You do the short version just as moved as.
Move to take the actions indicated on city clerk.
Amazing. Is there a second? Second by Councilor Kane. Any further discussion before we vote? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, DPW team. We'll see you
Thank you.
upstairs. Colleagues, I'm going to suggest, given that we are at 6:05 and Clerk Treasurer's office has put a lot of work, and I know there's a lot of good information, having reviewed this and helped to collaborate on this item, our final item 4.6, which is a fiscal year 25 budget to actual review, essentially the first third of the year. I would actually recommend action tabling this until the start of next week's Board of Finance, since we're meeting in a week, so we can start there and you all can really dig into this important update, and we can do the same for the public watching instead of just rushing through this because they get upstairs. If you're amendable, I would welcome a motion to table this until Monday.
I would move to table it.
Moved by Councilor Carpenter to table item 4.6 to the next Board of Finance, which is this coming Monday, December 16th. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on our motion, Councilor Barlow?
Yes, could we put this at the beginning of our agenda to make
Yes.
sure that.
You read my mind, it's going first.
They were whispering over here before, so that is exactly it. Yeah. Yep, of course. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of tabling this item till Monday indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Seeing no other business for the Board of Finance, I'm going to adjourn the meeting at 6:06 p.m. Thank you very much. I'm sorry about that.